guys, welcome back to the video. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny marks the 5th entry in the Indiana Jones franchise. So in this video, I'll be sitting down to rank all 5 movies from the worst to the best. Before we get into it, as always, know your ranking of all 5 of these movies in the comments down below, and subscribe so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. Both always getting more time. Let's get into it. I do want to preface, I watched the entire franchise for the very first time in preparation for Dial of Destiny. So it hasn't been a while since I've seen these movies. I'm very fresh. I've seen all of these movies one time, but with always getting more time, let's get into it. Starting the list off, in 5th place for me is Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this movie and I enjoy all of the Indiana Jones movies, but just out of all of the adventures and all of the honestly characters and treasures involved, this one just feels the least interesting to me. I still enjoyed this movie. Again, I think there's some great elements, but also out of all of the movies, this one is one of those that just feels way too long. Obviously, the runtime isn't like 3 hours or anything like that, but it just feels like a very long movie, and the adventure, again, just doesn't very much keep me entertained. But moving up the list, in 4th place for me is the newly released Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny at a 3 out of 5. I want to start off with the good because right out of the gate, the first 15 minutes of this film are absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I would think when I think of Indiana Jones in a modern blockbuster. You utilize CGI and face replacements to the best of your abilities while also meshing with the older adventures from the first 4 movies. I think the first 15 minutes is absolutely perfect. But then when you kind of get into the second act of this film, it just gets lost and a little bit bogged down. It has that same issue that Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has, which is it just does not feel like a very entertaining treasure that you're trying to go towards. It doesn't feel like anything super spectacular or bombastic is happening. But I will say, near the end of that second act, transitioning into the third act, when you find out about the dial and what its powers are, and I won't be getting into spoilers here, but I love that element that's introduced and just how the third act plays out. Yeah, it's a little bit elongated. It doesn't just end where you think it would end. It goes on for a little bit longer, but the concept that it utilizes, that more fantastical element, is so cool, and honestly, it really saved the movie for me because I'm a sucker for that fantastical element, and I love that they fully went through with it. It reminds me of one of my favorite film franchises of all time, which is Evil Dead. I absolutely love what they did at the end of Evil Dead 2 and then going into Evil Dead 3. They obviously don't do all of that stuff in Dial of Destiny, but they do an amazing job of just meshing in the parts where they can and just making it really work. I know a lot of people don't like that actress that's beside Harrison Ford. They think her character is just really, really annoying and just at times, but personally, I didn't really mind her. I think her motives in the beginning are a little bit watered down, and it just feels weird for someone not to like Indiana Jones that's not supposed to be the villain, because we're kind of forced to root for her because she's beside Indy, but at the same time, her character is just never interesting enough or compelling enough to be like, oh yeah, she might have weird motives, but I still want to care for her. Her character never gets to that level, so it's just a weird middle ground for the most of the story. And then obviously you have other elements of just the globe-trotting side of things, and I enjoyed all of that, but again, this movie ultimately just feels kind of unnecessary, also because there's not a distinct style to it, whereas Spielberg put an absolutely distinct style into all of the other 4 movies. This one, James Mangold doesn't really have a stamp to put on it. I think it's also because Steven Spielberg was heavily inspired by other stuff to create Indiana Jones in the first 4 movies, but James Mangold was inspired by the previous Indiana Jones movies, so it just feels a little bit dull. It doesn't feel like it's bringing stuff in from other genres per se, or just other directors or other ideas. It just feels like Indiana Jones, but this time it's a little bit more Disney-fied with more CGI, which allows for a little bit more spectacle, yeah, but it also takes away from that down-to-earth nature of just that adventure in the first 4 movies. But besides that, moving up the list, in 3rd place for me is Raiders of the Lost Ark at a 4 out of 5, and I do believe this is going to be my hottest take of the entire video, but I am always one to say that I think obviously an original is good, but if the sequels can just take what the original did and just make it more elevated, higher the spectacle, the scale, the scope, the size, the characters, just the ideas, when everything is more flamboyant in the next 2 entries, why would I put the original over it? Again, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this placement, but I stand by it. I think emotionally this one does do a little bit more than Temple of Doom, but other than that, I don't really think it has as much over the other two films. But obviously in comparison to my 4th and 5th spots, this is just an original adventure. It feels like a pure adrenaline rush. Every single moment you're scared for Indiana Jones, and it just creates such a compelling character. I also love the love story within this movie, and it's so well intertwined within the actual adventure story plot. And as a whole, this movie is just very, very fun. It doesn't do the level that Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade get to, but it does just enough for a first movie to make me absolutely love this character, love this world, and just be invested for more adventures with Indiana Jones. Next up on the list in second place for me is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom at a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like a lot of people have The Lost Ark over Temple of Doom, which honestly I totally understand, because Temple of Doom at times does feel a little bit emotionally hollow, but it is a massive step up from Raiders of the Lost Ark in terms of pretty much everything else. You have an absolutely elevated just set piece in every single part of this movie, and also you have Short Round as an amazing side character in this movie, but you also have the love interest, who I think works really, really well here. She's kind of just thrown into the mix, and you kind of see how Indiana Jones has to not only take care of her, but obviously Short Round as well. And I also just love the finale of this movie. I love the bridge scene where they all fall. I love the insert shots, and it's very cheesy and corny, but I understand it and it works. I think it's just classic Spielberg filmmaking. I think so much of the adventure aspect works here a lot more than Raiders of the Lost Ark, and maybe it's because I was already invested from Raiders, and then I went on to Temple of Doom, and watching these movies for the first time, I just felt fully invested in this character. I felt fully invested in the side characters as well. One of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise is when they're in the jungle, and I'm forgetting her name, but the love interest, she's basically complaining about how there's so many animals, and Indy and Short Round are playing, I think it's poker.
Hey, you cheat, Dr. Jones, you cheat. You the full car. You say now, no mistake. I'm very little, you cheat very big. Dr. Jones, you cheat. You pay money, you owe me 10 cents.
Look at this. Look at this. You accuse me of cheating? You cheated!
It is just an amazing back and forth. So much is happening, and it's just a masterclass in directing and filmmaking, and honestly acting as well. I absolutely love every element of this movie, and again, emotionally hollow at times, 100%, but other than that, I love every adventure element, and it's an adventure movie. But with that being said, in first place for me is obviously Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade at a 9 out of 10, honestly bordering a 9.5 out of 10 for me. This is one of the greatest action adventure movies of all time, and it might even be a hot take to have this one at number 1 on the list, but I'm a sucker for a father-son story, and so I think that's why this one especially hit for me. But just in general, this is the biggest the Indiana Jones franchise has been in terms of still balancing heart and adventure, and I think a big part to the heart aspect of it is obviously having a father and son story at the core of it. That inherently adds so much emotion that no matter what adventure you go on, no matter what kind of step you're taking in the like action side of it, you're always gonna have this core of emotion in there with the relationship. Another one of my favorite scenes of the entire franchise, arguably my favorite scene, is where his dad is saving Indy and he's reaching for the treasure and he's like, "I can reach it, Dad." That is one of the most emotionally prevalent moments of the entire franchise. I absolutely love it. This movie is honestly practically perfect. I also love all of the set pieces, all of just the adventure elements are turned up to 100, and obviously it's because Spielberg is at his height here. He's made 2 movies that are absolute bangers. He can basically do whatever he wants, but you can also say, oh, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it had higher stakes, it had a bigger treasure, it had all these bigger elements. Same thing with Dial of Destiny. They're basically talking about time here as a whole in Dial of Destiny, but I think what keeps The Last Crusade at such a high level compared to the other movies is because of the emotional moments. Yeah, it's not a big CGI fest of action, which also aids the emotional story because you can feel how grounded it is and actually feel the story within the emotion, but also within the action. It's just all of the layers work together very, very well. But guys, that wraps up my ranking for all 5 of the Indiana Jones movies. Again, let me know your ranking of all 5 of these movies in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.